So this is the end of chapter 9, and then we'll do chapter 11. So this is risk-adjusted performance, which simply means that how much money are you making relative to what you should be making? So if you told me, gosh, you make 2% each year in the stock market, considering how much risk you are taking on with the market, 2% is pretty bad. You can make 4% guaranteed in a bank in a CD. So this first measurement called Jensen's Alpha, by the way, there's like a website called Seeking Alpha. It's a good kind of investment website that provides a lot of investment advice on stocks and so on. Anyway, what investors are always trying to do is increase their alpha. What does alpha mean? So let's look at the second part. This is basically your CAPM model, which says, here's the risk-free rate, risk-free, no risk, return. This is beta of P, beta of your portfolio. So it's kind of how much risk is there in this portfolio. This is the return on the market. Remember, the market is like the S&P 500. And then there's your risk-free rate again. So when you combine all of this, this would say, okay, based on the risk for your portfolio, maybe you are expected to make a return of, say, 10%. And this R of P is the actual return on the portfolio. And let's say it's 13%. So if you actually made 13 and you were only expected to make 10 based on how much risk you have, you had 13 minus 10, you had a 3% positive alpha, which is great. You want a higher the number, the better, because it means that you actually made more than what you were expected to make. And that's what this definition is telling you right there. So if Holly had a beta of 1.2, 11% return is what she made. The S&P 500, that's the return on the market. There's the beta. There's the return on the portfolio. The risk-free rate is 3%. This R squared is meaningless, doesn't matter. Okay, so the return on the market was 10. Did she exceed expectations? So she was expected to make 11.4. She only made 11. So she actually was underperforming since that was a negative number. So not good. That's what that information tells you there. The second one is the Sharpe ratio, which on top here, if you look, says the return of the portfolio minus the risk-free rate. So it's how much money did you make compared to the risk-free rate. So this is return on top. So we want that number to be really high. This is standard deviation on the bottom, which is a measure of risk. We want standard deviation to be low. So basically, what makes the Sharpe ratio good is if we have a lot of return with a little bit of risk. So the only way we really can evaluate this number is comparing it to other investments, similar investments. So the higher the Sharpe ratio, the better. So there is the information about it. Remember, I'm going to give you a formula sheet on the quiz, the exact same one you get on the CFP exam. Well, I'll give it to you later this week. So here's the question. We have two funds. Fund B definitely had a higher return, but it also had more risk. So factoring in the risk, was that a good enough return? And if you look at the Sharpe ratios, actually Fund A had a better Sharpe ratio than B. So even though they made 10%, compared to how much risk they took on, Fund A did a better job than Fund B. So you would choose A over B in this case. If you were to look at some of this information, like if you go to this website for Fidelity, one of the largest mutual fund companies, here's just one fund called the Growth Company Fund. And it has all these metrics over here. There's alpha, beta, R squared, Sharpe, standard deviation. We've talked about all of those. And it compares the mutual fund to the rest of the competition, if you will. And for 3 years, they're about the same. Not a whole lot of difference. But if you go to the 5-year number right here, you'll see, look at the alpha, 5 compared to minus 0.3. So they did much better. Their return versus the category was much higher. And you can look at other ones there. The last thing on the bottom of your page is an asset allocation chart that financial planners would kind of use to guide them. This is percent equities, which are once again stocks over bonds. So this would be, if you're 25 to 30 and you're kind of aggressive, you should have 80% in stocks, 20% in bonds. If you might need your money for like a down payment on a house, you might be more conservative. On the other end of the continuum, we have someone over 70 who's retired, only has 20% in stocks, 80% in bonds. Notice no 100%. You're never going to see anybody really recommend 100% in anything. So remember that for your quiz, because I'll ask you questions kind of along these lines on the quiz. Here are the expected returns for these same portfolio asset allocations. So you can see not a big difference amongst those, but anyway, just to give you an idea. And that's kind of how you would, as a financial planner and as an individual, you notice as we get older, we tend to reduce our amount in stocks. A lot of financial planners would say really probably stocks are doing so much better than bonds over the years that probably this number here should be even a little bit higher than what these are. So should you invest 100% in stock? These are bear markets, which means the stock market is going down is what bear means. These are all these different kind of crises and how long they lasted and what their impact was on global stocks. This was a very depressing time for me, having a bunch of stocks in those times. But notice what happened with treasury bills. Look how many years they were up during those times. That's why we diversify. So had you had all your money in stocks, everything would be going down. But if you had diversified and some of your money was over here, you had definitely some bright spots in your portfolio. Okay? This is what you're going to see in Money Guide Pro. It's going to say, okay, here's where your assets are allocated now. We're going to recommend maybe a more diverse portfolio to allocate your funds in a more, risk-based manner that's going to help returns compared to risk to get a higher alpha and so on. Okay, so that's it for chapter 9. We will move on to chapter 11 in the next video.